NHL action is officially back, and we are primed to take a look at some players ready for big second half fantasy performances on the Saturday special of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And of course, coming in hot with big time bets. Let's tap in and get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Holiday fantasy hockey coverage continues on the Saturday edition of your daily source for fantasy hockey news, betting breakdowns, and of course, everything from the NHL. It's a Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers. Salute, much love. Happy holidays, and thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Even here on this Saturday special, we can't stop bringing the fantasy fire steel. The work as a fantasy GM, it doesn't stop. And now, with hockey officially back, we got to continue to look at our last five players poised for big second half performances. You and I spoke about our first five players we like to kind of explode or have a very good second half on yesterday's episode. I got some more players. Actually, you alluded to some of them on yesterday's episode, but I got to talk about them again. We have 11 games on the betting board tonight, but over to you, my friend. What are some more players that you think should line up to explode in this second half, or at least bring some proper fantasy production?
Well, I'm going to go back to Buffalo, and I talked about Alex Tuch on yesterday's episode. Again, we could talk about many players from this organization, but I'm looking at Tage Thompson specifically right now, and, you know, he's still doing pretty well. He's still in contention for the Rocket Richard. He's 7 goals back of Leon Draisaitl. He has 17 goals on the season. He needs to start focusing. Again, we want him to continue shooting the puck. In fact, I think he needs to shoot the puck a lot more. But when you're the best player on the team, and I know Rasmus Dahlin is in the mix there as well on the back end, but when you're the best forward on the team, you need to be able to make plays with the puck on your stick. You can't just be waiting, like we like to say, Ovechkin's office, waiting for passes, you know, across the rink, waiting for those on the power play. He needs to have the puck on his stick, skating, maneuvering, using his edges, and make those plays for his teammate, Alex Tuch, Rasmus Dahlin, Jason Zucker, these guys, JJ Peterka, who struggled so far in the first half of the season as well. I think on top of it, again, shooting the puck as much as possible, but making those plays that we know that he's capable of doing, like we've seen him do in the past. His assist has completely dropped off in the last 2 seasons. You know, obviously that big year of 94 points, he finished with 47 goals and 47 assists. The year after that, finished with 27 assists. Now he's down to 9 assists currently at this point in the season, 30 games. I mean, he's still getting it done, 26 points in 30 games, but I think there's a lot more that he can do. Again, like I said, with Alex Tuch and this Buffalo team, if they want to make the postseason, he needs to be a key factor, if not the biggest factor for Buffalo.
Wholeheartedly agree about the Sabres. We alluded to it on yesterday's episode that a number of these guys could fit the mold that, yeah, we just expected so much more, but we can't really peg what they'll do in the standings. However, the fantasy side of things, I think you and I both would like to see a whole lot more, but we expect it as well. And it comes from Rasmus Dahlin as well, and he's on my list. And I think, given what we've seen from the progression of this player over the last number of years, that we can expect a little bit more. And look, I think we threw this out yesterday, 23 points in 27 games played. For most fantasy hockey D-men, you're probably pretty happy with it. But when you're a guy in Dahlin who is coming off of back-to-back seasons of 60-plus points, this is a guy that we invested in, Steele. I think you and I had him on a whole bunch of our top 10 lists in terms of headed into this draft season. And you mentioned the shots on net. This Buffalo Sabres team, considering all of those shooters, they sit 25th in the NHL in shots per game at 27.5. That's not nearly enough considering the snipers and the speedsters in that lineup. Again, I don't know what happens to them in the standings, but I'm fairly comfortable coming on here and throwing on a Sabre or two on this list. That's how I feel about Rasmus Dahlin, someone who also can bring it across the peripherals. 154 hits, block shots, and 195 hits last year. Both of those numbers also down, but I think given everything we've seen from this player, he's just far too good and valuable to not expect a lot more production, especially coming up in this second half. You're on mute, brother.
100%. We could talk about the Buffalo Sabres for this entire episode with many players that need to step up in a big way. I'm going to go back out to the Western Conference again with the Edmonton Oilers. I talked about Zach Hyman yesterday. I'm looking at Stuart Skinner for a big second half.
Okay.
And he's honestly already, in the same breath with Zach Hyman, just like he's done so far recently. He actually has turned it around in his last 5 games against Ottawa, Boston, Vegas, Tampa Bay. All save percentages above 925. He's got 4 wins in his last 5 games. So he has turned it around of recently, but currently so far this season, he has an 895 save percentage with a 2.85 goals against average. He's still getting it done. Obviously, this is not a droppable goaltender by any means at this point, but he's the guy. He is the guy for the Edmonton Oilers. And like we've seen him do over the last couple of seasons now, and in the postseason, he turns it on in the second half. So
it's a fact.
There's a goaltender that I'm really looking forward to watching in the new year. Obviously, I think he can really get this Edmonton Oilers back on track, be a top team in the Pacific Division. With their fight with the other teams they're fighting against right now. So Stuart Skinner, for me, I think he's got the confidence right now. A good break for a lot of these players over Christmas, over the holidays, just to kind of get their energy back, relax, take a load off. But now, game time, Stuart Skinner, he's the goaltender for the Edmonton Oilers. You're not going to be going with Calvin Pickard for many, many games for the foreseeable future.
This is, again, the situation and the fantasy angle that we mentioned on yesterday's episode with these players, that it might not fit the mold for every single one of them, but they definitely could fit the mold for buy low targets as well. Maybe you flash a couple of options at them, and then you see what you can do in terms of attaining some of these pieces that I really do think have big second half performances. Let me slide into an Edmonton Oilers player that I had invested in heavily, Steele, that I think, given what we're starting to see now from the Zach Hymans of the world, from some of those depth scoring pieces in the Edmonton organization, it's got to be the Bouch bomb. Evan Bouchard, I think, just given, again, this fits the mold for every player that I'm talking about, almost the progression that we've seen over the past couple of years and the situation that they're in to succeed. 25 points through 34 games for Evan Bouchard this season is a fantasy disappointment. There is no way to sugarcoat it, especially when I think, Steele, we came into this season, it was Cale Makar, Rasmus Dahlin, Evan Bouchard right there as, the 3rd or 4th D-man off the board in a lot of leagues headed into draft season. But this is the Edmonton Oilers we're talking about. I'm going to talk about their explosive offense. When it comes to bets, and this guy still quarterbacks, he still gets almost 24 minutes of ice time per night. And I think given that shot, 57 block shots, 14 hits, I think it's going to creep up in a major, major way. I don't know if I'm off the mark on this one, but just given the talent and everything around him, especially on the power play and what I think is going to hold for the second half for the Oilers, I think I would be remiss to not talk about Evan Bouchard, just given his peripheral options around him, like a secondary assist. I expected him to have triple this by now, almost, Steele. That's how good the Edmonton Oilers can be at the offensive end when they're clicking.
Yeah, it's been a little worrisome for Evan Bouchard this season. I mean, especially for what he was, showing off in the postseason, especially last year finishing with 80+ points. He's been very sloppy, and I don't know what's going on in between the ears. There's been countless plays that we could rewind the tape and show on here if it were possible, where he just gives up on plays. I mean, there's been 3 or 4 breakaways where he's been able to, if he wanted to, skate back hard and make, force a play towards the boards or, go straight towards that, the opposition with whoever has the puck. There's been countless times this season where he just gives up on plays, lets the opponents on breakaways and gives them a good scoring chance, which usually ends up in the back of the net. So I think honestly, his teammates need to hold him a lot more accountable for what he's done this season. But I agree with you, along with Stuart Skinner and Zach Hyman. Those are 3 guys from the Edmonton Oilers. Again, we expect big things in the second half. Those 3 guys are key for them to have success.
And we'll continue to monitor all of the fantasy angles, hockey news, betting breakdowns that you need. 30 minutes in and out every single day. We get you guys back to your busy lives. We keep it short, sweet, educational, and I hope a little bit fun as well. We'll continue to talk about a few more of these players that we think are going to have big-time second-half performances. And, of course, big-time bets coming up at the end of every single episode. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real cash. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your other favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on all the action. And right now, during Picksmas, this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving over $30 million in rewards away this December. So you got to be checking out the Prize Picks app. Use it today. Download it and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Make sure you share with your friends and family out there. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support. Thank you so much, especially over the holiday season. Back to some breakout players who can have breakout performances in the second half of the season. I want to talk about your boy, Seth Jarvis, for a minute right now.
Thank
you.
He's
still been pretty good this season. 21 points in 27 games, 70 shots on net, 12.9 shooting percentage. I just think there's more to give. There's a lot more that this guy has in the tank that we haven't seen from him this season. The fact that he finished last year 33 goals, 34 assists for 67 points in 81 games. He doesn't even have 10 goals this season. 9 goals, 12 assists for 21 points in 27 games so far this season. I just expect a little bit more. I think you do as well. And I think
of course,
maybe that has a little bit to do with the surgence and the production of Martin Necas right now. I mean, he's been popping off for Carolina. Obviously, Sebastian Aho doing his thing, centering that top line. I just think Seth Jarvis, with the skill set that he has, the speed that he has as well, there's a little bit more that he could be doing. Maybe he just needs to get in those dirty areas more frequently for this Carolina team, and we can start seeing a lot more production in the offensive zone. Again, nothing wrong with 21 points in 27 games, but what we've seen from him over the last 3 years, the step forwards that he's making with his development, I think he is a player to watch out for in the second half of this season.
I really like that you're highlighting my boy first and foremost. Secondly, the Carolina Hurricanes, we know the story and the success pattern for this club. Very stingy defensively, relying on good goaltending play from whoever's been over there in the cage over the last couple of seasons. Rod Brindamore hangs his hat on defensive play, and we've been worried about the offense. And this year, 8th in NHL scoring for overall goals for. Their power play right now, I just had that up. It's clicking at the 5th best percentage in the league. And yeah, Seth Jarvis is on that top power play unit. So when I look at those numbers, Steele, I got to wholeheartedly agree. And you already know how I feel about this player. And if you weren't buying into me backing Seth Jarvis, how about this kid made the 4 Nations Cup roster? And that's all you need to know, because there are some seriously big names, and he has put himself in the mix for some of the best out of this country, and that top power play unit is for real. Svechnikov, Aho, Gostisbehere, Necas, and Seth Jarvis. I think they're going to continue to get theirs, and it's only a matter of time before he's a shooter, Steele. He's a winner. He's everything that I've been saying he is, and then some. He's still young, and that's going to happen. But I am so with you for this take. You know you were going to get me fired up with the Seth Jarvis love. So that was an easy one. Very quickly, because you mentioned it and covered it very nicely on yesterday's episode, Owen Tippett. He hits the list for me big time. Another shooter. Great release. Very underrated release. And I think Owen Tippett, everything that you mentioned before, the good mix of young players in Philly, John Tortorella starting to kind of come around on you in terms of what he's been able to do and get out of these young players, Michkovs, Frost, whatever else. So for me, definitely Owen Tippett, 11 goals, 11 assists, 87 shots on net, considering how lethal that release is that I just mentioned. I say you shoot the biscuit, Steele. He had 2 or less shots in 4 of his last 5 games headed into the break. Shoot that bad boy, Tippett. And I think you'll see these numbers explode, just like he did in his second last game for 4 points before the break. Love that you mentioned him yesterday, Owen Tippett. I think he's just far too good. And again, with like these other players that we were talking about, the progression of late over the last couple of years tells me we're in for a lot more fantasy value.
Talking about shooters right here, JT Miller makes the list for me. He needs to do what he does best, and that's shoot the puck a lot more.
You had to balance it out. Seth Jarvis with your boy. I like it.
I had to balance it out just a little bit, and sort of the opposite of what I was talking about with Tage Thompson. I think JT Miller just needs to let the game come to him and do what he does best, like I just said, and shoot that biscuit on net. His playmaking ability speaks for itself. When we look at what JT Miller's been able to accomplish over the last 3 seasons with Vancouver, 67 assists, 50 assists, 66 assists last year with 103 points. We know he's capable of setting up his teammates, being able to be that veteran presence, that leader with a massive amount of skills in the offensive zone. The playmaking he does best. The playmaking will come to him naturally.
Mm-hmm.
What he does best is shoot that biscuit, like you were just talking about with Owen Tippett, and I think he needs to do a lot more of that. Again, nothing bad with what JT Miller's accomplished so far this season. 21 points in 24 games. Only has 6 goals to show for it, though. He's had 30-plus goal seasons in his last 3, and again, I don't really know what's going on. None of us know what's going on with this so-called beef between him and Elias Pettersson. They've come to the media and have countless times now have said, there's nothing going on. If you want, I can bring PD out here to do this interview with me. There's clearly something going on in the locker room. There's clearly something going on between these two guys. There is a rift. We would not be talking about it. They would not be talking about it if it wasn't true. So there's clearly something going on, which has been brewing for the last couple of seasons. Maybe this is the tipping point for one of them. But again, they need to figure that out if they want to be a Stanley Cup contender this season. JT Miller starts with him.
Absolutely love it. Hey, look, we got to get the plugs in for the players that we've talked about.
We got to get those plugs in.
Jarvis, JT Miller, this is On Brand, baby. And look, we'll continue to stay on brand the rest of the week. Tomorrow's episode, we'll be back. We're bringing it. McClellan in behind the Red Wings bench. Kaprizov, he's out. Austin Matthews continues on the shelf.
Blackwood, baby.
Ovi nearing a return, and Blackwood getting a 5-year deal. All of a sudden, things in the NHL are shaking up, but we'll have you covered. Just very quickly before we get to break, I got one more player after the break along with bets, and I'll get this one out of the way now. Jeremy Swayman has been far too good of a goaltender over the last number of seasons, and I'm not writing him off just yet. Also, this is why I'm really thinking that he is going to have the situation to succeed. I can't sit on here and say I'm comfortable about the Boston Bruins offensive attack. I'm not going to do it because that's clearly not their strength. But what they have done is allow the 5th least shots against per game at 26.8. So I think the ability to play a sound defensive game, which we knew they got all those big boys on the back end. They bring in Zadorov. You knew they were going to be a tough team to play against, at least defensively. He has been disappointing, Steele. There is no way around it. 12, 10, and 3, 1 shutout, 3.05 goals against, and an 8.87 save percentage are so not Swayman-like numbers when he is still sitting at, for his career, 91, 43, and 18 with a 2.45 goals against and a 9.15 save percentage. For me, this one was actually right there as almost the most obvious because he is a sensational goaltender. I would still put him in the top 10 potential. Right now, is he a top 10 fantasy goaltender? No, he's not, but he has the potential. And given how good they are defensively still, fantasy-wise, I think he has all the opportunity to succeed and still be very valuable, especially in this second half. This guy will be better in the second half. You can lock that in.
The Boston Bruins need to be better in the second half because they've got the Ottawa Senators nipping at their tails right now. Who knows what McClellan's going to get going with the Detroit Red Wings. Maybe they make a crazy comeback as well. We've seen that happen in the past. And I'm going to be talking about an Ottawa Senator player after we come back from the break for the Poised to break out in the second half of the season. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up that W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's absolutely thrilling. Flip knows it as well. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip, I'll throw it back over to you very shortly. I just want to mention this player as well. He's been absolutely stellar for the Ottawa Senators, and I think he can have a bigger second half of the season.
Ooh.
Tim Stützle, for me, I think he really needs to be considered one of the best not one of the best players. Obviously, I'm not going to throw him in there with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but he could be. Okay. He's making a name for himself, being maybe in that top 10 for players in the league right now. He has been spectacular for the Ottawa Senators, even with the slow start they've had to the season. 39 points in 34 games so far this year, 15.9 shooting percentage. He brings the physical aspect as well. Only 69 shots, which is very surprising. He needs to shoot the puck a lot more, what we know he's capable of doing. Again, sort of slow in the goal department over the last 2 seasons, finished with 18 last year, 11 goals currently this season for 39 points. I think this player, I think he can hit 100+ points. I really think this Ottawa Senators team is coming around, making a name for themselves. So a lot of those guys, like we've talked about, Drake Batherson, Brady Tkachuk, Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot on the blue line. I know Linus Ullmark has re-aggravated an injury, or he's injured right now, but he's been spectacular for the holidays as well. Tim Stützle, for me, I think he's been fantastic, and I think he's just going to continue to get better and better as the season goes on.
I can hear the support from the Ottawa Senators faithful, but let's be clear. And I think one of the first bets that you and I made was back in the first season of doing this show together. And I said, Tim Stützle, 90+ points. And you were like, look, he's good, but he's not in that realm of a 100-point player. And I think that one I squeaked out a win in that bet. But you know how I feel about Tim Stützle when it comes to this point production. And I know it's a bit of a polarizing player when it comes to his somewhat tendency to hit the old dive train and be a bit of a floppy kind of lot of head cocking back situations, if you know what I'm saying. However, there is no denying how good he is and his offensive upside. A player steal, you know, I like to say this, I still think just scratching the surface of what he's able to really do consistently night in, night out. And I think that what it has to be is that consistency of being a veteran leader. Now, something that a player that is striving to do the same and is still very, very young at only 22 years old, we've been waiting in Leafs Nation. We've been waiting in the fantasy hockey circles to really see Matthew Knies take a big step. And he's kind of bubbled. He's looked really good. He's getting comfortable with his body. Ice time is up to over 18 minutes a night. 11 goals, 8 assists, 19 points in 33 games for a kid with only 116 career games under his belt is pretty good. And I'm not going to say I'm disappointed with the first half, but I think now the first half of this season is under the belt and it's go time. Matthews is still going to be out. There is minutes to be had and opportunity to be had here. And I'll close out the point with Knies at this, and this is all you really need to hear right now. Playing on a very good second line with Willie. The middle pieces are obviously being shuffled around right now, but anyone playing with William Nylander deserves fantasy love, and it's the power play deployment. Tavares, Riley, Nylander, Mitch, and Matthew Knies. Immediately, if he's out there, I'm taking a shot on Matthew Knies. I think he's also the beautiful piece to slap in with maybe a bigger name on this list deal. You get kind of a quieter guy and one of the more obvious guys we talked about yesterday. Sandwich them together, dangle another piece in what could be a good trade. I think Matthew Knies, body, production, power play deployment, put them all together, primed for a big second half performance.
Well, maybe we can expect big things from Knies tonight against the Washington Capitals, because that goes hand in hand with my first player prop bet of big time bets, and that's William Nylander anytime goal against these Washington Capitals.
We didn't even plan that.
We didn't plan that whatsoever. It's just seamless, just flawless. That's what we do on the pod. Nylander anytime goal is my first pick of Saturday night. He has dominated against the Washington Capitals in his last 10 games. 7 goals, 10 points total in his last 10. He likes to score with Austin Matthews out of the lineup. The puck's going to be on his stick. And I know this is a back-to-back situation for the Leafs. They played Detroit last night, going up against Washington tonight. I still think Nylander is going to be the go-to guy for Toronto for the time being, and he has been. He's second just behind Leon Draisaitl for goals so far this season with 22 or 23 goals so far. I think he's going to continue to put that on, stockpile that on. And again, we talked about this, 3 weeks ago, that Nylander, you got to drop a couple of $5, $10, $20 on him for the Rocket Richard. He's in the race. He has been in the race, and he's scoring goals at will right now. Nylander, anytime goal for the first pick.
Love it, Steele. I love that you dug into the research bag a little bit. That's going to catch a little bit of my money for sure. It sounds like same game parlay o'clock over here for your boy Big Flip, and I'll spit it out very fast and simply put. The Edmonton Oilers roll into the LA Kings with a very, very good record over their last 10 games against these Kings. I think now the Hyman situation, you mentioned Stuart Skinner settling in. I think this team is going to really start to fire on all cylinders, and you're going to see it start early. You know Connor McDavid is hungry. He sees this opportunity in front of him, and he is the best player in the NHL. Fantasy-wise, we've had that conversation, right? Is it Mac Daddy?
McKinnon.
Is it Mac Daddy on better nights? Is it Nikita Kucherov? At the start of the year, you could have thrown Austin Matthews into that mix. However, in terms of game-changing in the standings ability to make his team better, it's Connor McDavid, and I'll finish it off very quickly. The Oilers continue to roll. Oilers, money line. I see a high-scoring game in this one. I'm seeing 4-3, 5-3, so hit me with the over. If you want to cop out because it's the same game parlay, drop it down to 5.5 and take me later and put it with the lock of the night after Sidney Crosby anytime assist. The Connor McDavid 2+ point show has been banging for your boy, and he's got multi-point games littered across the score sheet in his career against the LA Kings in 32 career regular season meetings. 44 points for McJesus. Hit me with a little Oilers special same game parlay on my lock of the night. Connor McDavid 2+ points along with the money line and the over 6.5. I'm not copping out, Steele. I'm going all in on this one early. Let's get this New Year paper.
You got to take advantage sometimes with these matchups. The Oilers have dominated the LA Kings, so I'm loving the same game parlay, loving the 2+ points. I've been hitting that all season
yes,
long.
You have.
My two final picks for Saturday, I'm going with the Bruins on the money line against the Columbus Blue Jackets. This is a back-to-back for Boston and Columbus. Again, we're recording early right now, but the Bruins have won 8 out of the last 10 matchups. They did play Friday. We don't know what the end results of that game was, but currently before the Friday game, the Bruins have won 8 out of the last 10. So I'm taking the Bruins on the money line. Jeremy Swayman will also be in the crease because Korpisalo got the first game of this back-to-back. That's the second pick, last pick of the night. I'm taking the Islanders on the money line against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They've won 7 of the last 9 between them. And right now, I really do think that if they can get consistent goaltending from Sorokin, this team, to me, is still a dark horse. I really like Bo Horvat. Matt Barzal's back in the lineup. We're still waiting for Noah Dobson to really start clicking like he did last season. But regardless, the history speaks for itself. 7 of the last 9 have gone the Islanders' way. Those are the 3 picks for me. Nylander anytime goal, Bruins money line, and Islanders money line will be my lock of the night.
I like that you're confident in the Islanders. Again, staying on brand with them as a dark horse team you like. I see you. I appreciate it. Willie's definitely going to catch a piece. Those other 2 games I'm not going to touch personally, but I really do like the Willie angle here. Look, he's got to step up with Poppy out of the lineup. It's a fact. These guys have the money. They have the tenure. And they obviously have the talent. It's got to be Willie and Mitchie stepping up with however long Matthews is out. It's those 2 guys to run the show now offensively. I think they've been quite lucky to get the production that they have out of John Tavares. This whole season, he's playing like a man possessed. So love that you're talking about the Leafers. We'll continue to cover all the NHL news tomorrow and all next week. We got you covered.
New Year's right around the corner. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, you got to make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.